Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in for this episode here on the MIgardener channel. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to turn this into this in just about 5 weeks. So I've done a lot of videos in the past on composting and what it takes to get perfect compost from start to finish. We have a couple videos on doing it with grass clippings, and really that's all this pile is. But it's grass clippings mixed with really anything that we get from the kitchen in terms of organic material. So it could be rinds from fruit, stuff that breaks down very quickly. We don't do like corn cobs and things like that, but stuff that breaks down really quickly, like fruit rinds, banana peels, eggshells, peelings from fruit, things like that. And so those all go in there as well. We also have any leaves that we rake up and mulch up, but essentially it is just your average compost pile. But there's some tricks and tips to getting it to turn from what you saw, which was just a big pile of green plant material, into this, which is a beautiful pile of nearly finished compost. So you have some stuff on the top that is still kind of breaking down on the exterior, but for the most part, it is this gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, rich compost. The first thing is that we combine finished compost with unfinished compost. And that acts as a starter. That's the first thing we do. When we get all of our grass clippings from mowing, we will take all those grass clippings and we'll have a little bit of reserve. That reserve is what kind of energizes the compost pile, because the finished compost has billions and trillions of bacteria, composting bacteria that will compost your soil or compost your grass clippings and turn it into just rich soil. So that starter is what we use every single time. And as you'll notice, we have two compost corrals, one with the finished compost, one with the unfinished compost. And as we use this on the garden, as we use this up, when it comes time to cycling it through, what we'll do is we will take all of it away from this corral when we go to start a new one, except for maybe about a couple handfuls of finished compost, and that acts as our starter. So that's step number one to having incredible compost in such a short amount of time. So part number two to a 6-week compost pile that will take us from the finished stuff, or from this pile to the finished stuff, is all about surface area. The more surface area you have, the more oxygen can come in, which is going to be part 3 to this video. But the more oxygen you have, the faster it will compost. So we always want things that have high surface area. Low surface area are things that are whole. If you have whole strips of cardboard, if you have whole melon rinds or whole leaves, you'll notice leaves really just pack together, mat together, and there's not a whole lot of oxygen in between the leaves. And so what happens is they just kind of get soggy and they fail to break down quickly. If we get like leaf matter or wood chips or anything like that laying around, we always run them through the lawnmower to increase and shred them up, to increase that surface area to kind of what we would consider a 6-week surface area. Like I said, you could throw whole leaves on, but they're not going to be 6-week material. It's going to be like 12, even longer weeks to fully composting. And this is going to be something you're going to have to trial with. I can only give you kind of what we do and how we get to that point, but you're going to have to learn what 6-week material looks like, because a compost pile can break down in 6 weeks, and you can also have a very successful compost pile but have it take 12 weeks. And I would much rather have a 6-week compost pile because of our turnaround time. I've learned that the average turnaround time for a compost pile on our property has to be about 6 weeks, because we're not going to build any more compost corrals. If you have lots of room and you have the space and your neighbors don't mind seeing lots of compost, you can take your time. But for us, we want to have a brand new compost pile turn into a finished compost pile that we can then use on the beds, feed the plants, and things like that, that we can then start another compost pile. And it takes about 6 weeks or so to generate enough biomass from around our property to create a whole new compost pile. The next step is step 3, and that is oxygen. As we talked about with the surface area, oxygen is so important. And the more oxygen you have in the pile, the faster it's going to compost. Without oxygen, you're going to have anaerobic composting, which smells like methane, it stinks, and it's slimy. It just really does not produce a very good compost. When it's all said and done, compost is compost, but the composting process could be much more pleasant, let's put it that way, if you have an oxygen-rich environment. Also, it's going to break down so much quicker because anaerobic is a very slow process, whereas aerobic is oxygen-rich. It's going to break down so much faster, and they use that oxygen up. So I'm going to grab my pitchfork, and that's what we use to oxygenate the bed. It's so important to constantly flip your material from the inside and bring it to the outside, or the outside bring it to the inside rather, and constantly be doing that, because you'll notice the outside won't break down as much, but the inside is where the core of the compost pile happens. And a good compost pile should be about 3 feet wide by about 3 feet tall. And that's why this compost corral is perfect, because we know that when we fill this up with material, we're going to have enough organic matter, both carbon and nitrogen, to break down. Now I know you're gonna be asking this in the compost. I know you're gonna be asking this in the comments box below. Luke, what about the nitrogen to carbon ratio? We really don't worry about that here that much, because the fact of the matter is that if you have grass clippings, you're going to have the right amount of carbon to nitrogen. If you feel that you have a lot of green material, just throw in some shredded newspaper, throw in some shredded paper, throw in some shredded leaves. It is important to have a carbon to nitrogen ratio, but I feel like a lot of people get hung up on it and say, I don't know what this is or how to do it, so I'm not going to compost. Just try it. I guarantee you probably are going to have enough carbon to nitrogen. I almost guarantee it. So I'm gonna grab my pitchfork. I'm gonna show you how I flip this. Really simple, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so I'm gonna take the stuff here, and I'm simply gonna pull it to the front, because we've got to get all this stuff. We just threw this stuff on here, so we've got to get all of this stuff here, essentially on the outside of the compost pile. You'll see here, the color begins to change. It becomes to turn more of a gray tone, and with that comes a lot of heat and a lot of steam, and oh yeah, that's nice and hot. So you'll notice that the color, oh, this is nice and warm. So you'll notice the color changes. That is so important to see. If you see this and it's nice and warm, you're doing something right. So what we're going to do is we're going to just move this from the outside, or from the inside to the outside. And then I'm going to take what was on the outside and put it right where it's going to be on the inside there. Okay. And all we're doing is we're just putting that oxygen back in the compost pile, because that's what the bacteria needs. So there we go. Put this back together, and you can see here, it's not a rocket science project here. It's just it's a real easy thing. So then we're gonna take the stuff that was in the center, roughly the center, you know, it all kind of gets mixed around eventually, but we want to try to get that nice gray material on the outside as much as possible so that it composts evenly. So now that we've flipped the compost pile and we've gotten lots of oxygen in it, step number 4 is water. Now water, I cannot stress how important this is. Bacteria, much like you and I, need water. So oxygen and water is the biggest thing that people fail at. That's one of the biggest reasons why people don't have a successful compost pile, because you can do everything right, but if you don't have water, your bacteria are going to die from a lack of water. And so by keeping them fed with lots of water will allow them to continue to thrive. And so what I'll do is I'll take a hose and I will soak this down. We actually have rain in the forecast, so I'm not going to soak them down any more than that, because you can over soak your compost. And what we typically say is that we will soak our compost until we start to see water kind of running down at the bottom. We start the water up at the top, and the water will gently shed down. And then when water begins to drip down to the base here, we'll stop watering. And that could be anywhere between 5 gallons to 6 gallons of water in a compost pile of this size. And as it shrinks, you need less and less water. So really, you have to go by eye. I can't tell you how much you're going to need. So just go basically by the fact that you want it to be like a damp sponge. If you pick up the stuff and you wring it out, you should not see a ton of water just oozing out. It should just feel damp to the touch, and that's the perfect consistency. And then, so step number 5 is continuing the process. So step number 5 is continue steps 2 through 4. And if you do all those right, in about 6 weeks, you're going to see perfect compost. Now there is an additional step, which is step number 6, that we're gonna go over to the other side of the compost corral, to the finished side, and I'll show you what we do then. So step 6, this is a super important one in my opinion. Now, everyone will have their own set of opinions, but the big one is allowing a week of rest. So I guess you could consider this like a 7-week compost, because I always let my compost, once it's finished, there's no more heat being generated, it is black, and it is rich with organic matter that has been broken down, and it is a finished compost pile. I will let it set for 1 week. And why, you may ask? The reason is because when that heat is built up, you have temperatures of 105 to 160 degrees. It is a very hot compost pile. And that is done to sanitize your compost, because any weed seeds in there will be killed. The temperature rises so high that any worms won't go in your compost pile. Other forms of bacteria and really good mycorrhiza, fungus, things like that, won't be in your compost, because the temperatures are so high that it will essentially denature any proteins in life. So when you run a fever of 102, 103, your body is trying to heat up to help denature some of those proteins in the bacteria or the virus that you have. So your body's trying to fight that off, and that's why you have a fever. So your compost pile has what we kind of consider a fever, and it just kills off a whole lot of life. So then what you want to do is you want to let it sit for a week to let that life come back in. And for an organic garden, that is so vital. Over the course of a week, you'll see composting worms migrate up into the compost to really break it down, because even though this is considered finished, this is not what composting worms would consider finished. So earthworms and red wigglers and pill bugs, pill bugs, they get a bad rep, but pill bugs break down stuff. You want nematodes in the compost, and you want all the good fungus and bacteria that is right now void from this compost. You want that to eventually move back in, and they will move back in very quickly. And so they'll come in through the soil, and they'll naturally just take up residence in your compost pile over the course of that week. So that is the next and final step that you want to do to ensure that your compost is of the richest quality. As always, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you learned something new. Please do share it with your friends. I think this type of information is so important, and it's definitely not a secret that gardeners keep. It's just something that we do, and so often we fail to share it in a way that is accessible for the masses. So I do hope that you share it with your friends, and also remember to like this video. It does help to share the video. YouTube likes to see that you're engaging with the video, so leave a comment if you want, and give this a try and let us know how it works for you. I guarantee you're going to have success. It is something that a lot of people really need to be doing more of. Instead of sending their stuff off to the compost facility or sending it off to a landfill, keep it on site. Use it to feed your plants. It'll help you out, and it will help you save money in the garden as well. So I'll talk to you all later. This is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow big or go home. We'll catch you later. See ya. Bye.